So,
Hello.
hello, welcome everybody, and Happy New Year to our first Recovery Live streaming presentation of
2024
the year, 2024, right? And a beautiful cold day here in New York City. How is it out there in California, Alicia?
is cold. Yes, it's about 40 degrees. Not raining, but it's cold.
We got a great show for you today, everybody. We're going to talk about resolutions. We're going to talk about dry January. We're going to talk about some events that we have coming up, this virtual retreat this weekend, mocktail hour, second mocktail hour going on in a couple weeks, and some other things. Retreat here in New York City in April. So many things going on. Going to be a great show.
Yeah. Oh, virtual retreat this weekend, 5th through the 7th. You can still sign up.
Through the 7th. So yeah, let's talk about that for a second, and then we're going to bring our special guest on, Grant from the Phoenix, who is our buddy and partner in crime here in New York City, working on all different modalities, trying to help people get better lives in sobriety, get sober and stay sober, and get fit and get healthy, and in every way that you can. But this weekend, guys, we do have the virtual retreat. If you're on and you're woke up this morning and said, I've had enough, made a resolution, which we know happens with a lot of people, and say, I'm going to quit, we have this opportunity this weekend to come to the virtual retreat. There's a link that Cass was just putting through here. You could go to Came to Believe Recovery Live, Came to Believe Recovery, and find the link and join us this weekend and do it right from your couch or your armchair at your house. Virtual retreat. And guys, our experience is people get transformations right over to the Zoom channel. It's happened. We have some of our leaders that have gone on to lead retreats who entered the program by virtual retreat during the pandemic and went on to become volunteers and be with us for a long time. So it works, and it's we would encourage it. And we have our mocktail hour down at 32 Prince Street down in Soho on the 17th of January. So come join us. Sober Curious, if you want a place just to come where there's no drinking and we're meeting some new people and have some fun. We're going to have a panel discussion again. And it should be great. Last one was really great. I couldn't believe the people that came just kind of out of nowhere, that were just looking for some place to go that didn't have alcohol. And they showed up. And that's exactly what we want. We want to just spread awareness that there are safe places to come, and that there are people that are sober for whatever reason, and that there's all kind of help or no help if you don't need it. But we want these places to exist here in New York City and have all these resources available. So big January coming.
Sober's January, or what's it called?
Dry January.
Dry January.
Dry January. So that is the topic of today's discussion. Is we want to talk a bit about Dry January and what it's all about, and what kind of suggestions we might give to somebody wondering if they drink too much or do too many drugs or eat too much or gamble too much, or right, whatever it is that you think you do
Too much.
to excess, right? And
Too
that
much.
has you somehow in what you might call broken, or has you somewhere distraught in your life, and it's affecting you in a negative way, whatever that is. And how are we going to address it, and how are we going to, and this the time, and maybe
Yeah.
this month is when you take a test and say, let me see if I can stop whatever it is that has me this way for a month. And
I think, don't you think too, I know you do, that some people are just trying it and they might not think they're alcoholics. Because last night I was at dinner with family, there's probably 15 of us. And one couple, a young couple, they're 25-ish, they're doing Dry January just because their friends are, and they're kind of just trying it. But I don't think they think they're alcoholic. I might think differently, but I know that they don't. But it was interesting that they're just trying it. They're going to see what happens. I think for the month, right? It's for people that maybe just want to be healthy. Maybe they don't have a problem with alcohol, but alcohol is toxic and it's not healthy. So some people just want optimal health, so they're going to just stop drinking and stop sugar and stop whatever just because they want to be healthy. But for our purposes and the virtual retreat, it's more so of like it's causing some problems, big problems probably, and you can't stop on your own. But Sober January would be a good eye-opening for those who think, oh, I could do it. And then by day 3, they can't. Be a red flag, right? To be like, let's go to this virtual retreat.
Reach out to us. Well, let's, we're right into our discussion. I think it's awesome. We got so much to talk about today. Let's bring Grant on from the Phoenix, and he's right here in New York City. How are you today, Grant?
Hi, Grant.
I'm great. Hi, Tom. Hi, Alicea. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. You heard us get right rolling into this, Grant, about
chomping at the bit. Yeah.
Dry January.
These kind folks forget about me. I wouldn't be surprised because they spend a lot of time caring about a lot of other people. So,
see, resentment
off the radar. It's all right.
If you're resentful, it's just give you opportunity to grow, brother. Do a little step 10 work.
Yeah, exactly. Opportunity to practice patience and acceptance. People invite me on the podcast.
Oh, you're Cass's favorite.
And I expect that I'm, I expect that I'm the star of the show, but I'm not. I've come to believe otherwise. Yeah. So yeah, Dry January, very, very exciting. I was listening to you talk, and the thing I kept thinking about is, I've recently made a resolution this year, to stop. I think, I don't know, forever. Well, forever I've recently stopped watching or consuming sports or going on YouTube. Those are two things that I stopped doing about like 7 days ago around Christmas. I got an early start to my resolution because I found that those things weren't serving me, and I'd waste a lot of time, and I'd always feel sort of frantic and rushed because I'd be like, hold on, let me just see who won the Rangers game. And I stopped doing those things, and I realized that it was really easy over the holidays when my time was entirely my own. But the second it was like, I have to sit down and I have to write some emails and I have to get back to work, and which I'm super grateful to have happen because that presented its whole own set of problems, having downtime. But the second I open my internet browser, I'm like, let me just see, there's got to be something I can watch for 10 minutes, or there's got to be something I can do to distract myself. So I think an important thing when thinking about resolutions is about creating environments and setting oneself up for success, and realizing that we don't respond to different stimuli or substances or whatever. We don't have the same cravings. We don't have the same urges all of the time. And that there are things in our life that create more disruption towards our self-will than others, I guess.
Well, absolutely. And I love that, Grant. I'd call that, for me, it would be shortening just random screen time that doesn't, really value, even though we talk ourselves into that, it's valuable because it's something we needed to watch or somebody sent us something. But the other thing is giving ourselves a break. You say, I'm going to abandon it. And we got to talk about that a little bit, about why some resolutions fail, which 90% of them do, guys. According to statistics, 90% of people that make resolutions don't follow through with them. Now, the three of us are so healthy emotionally and so healthy that we will be.
That's what healthy people say, right?
We'll be the 12% that make it because we do it. But making realistic goals and making them and ensuring that we're being authentic about our desires and our needs. And we've really made a commitment that it matches our identity, and that it's something that we want to work towards for our life. And like you said, Grant, it's a lifetime thing. Sometimes people want to make a resolution and it's a short-term thing, or someone else told them they should do it. And it can set you up for failure if you're somebody who then just didn't do it. You ask them, well, did you really want to do that? And they go, well, no, so-and-so told me I should do it, right? I think a lot of resolutions have a genesis of that.
Yeah, I agree. And that also makes me think of Dry January, I think, is this wonderful opportunity, but it's a little bit of a misnomer, because for me, quitting anything, whether it was heroin or alcohol or YouTube, is at the greatest length that I can think about it is one day at a time.
Right.
But it's usually 10 minutes at a time or something.
Right.
And you're not going to somebody will, right? But I certainly wouldn't if I were to take on something like Dry January. I wouldn't succeed being like, I just like February 1st, just got to do it until February 1st. It would be like, today is January 2nd. How can I meet my needs today so that I can continue to pursue this goal?
And have one, like no YouTube today, not no YouTube. I'm going to eat this. I'm going to run this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do, because then we just get all overwhelmed. I mean, 3 at the max, but one thing that you just concentrate on, I think, is key too. People have too many, and then they wonder why they fail, and they don't like the baby steps. That's not good enough. Well, how's it working for you? It's not working. So do a baby step, get that down, and then add another one, and it just snowballs.
Yeah, I've recently adopted a practice that my wife taught me. My wife is a highly functioning, highly productive human being. I'm working on it. But one thing that she does is she puts like incredibly easy things on her to-do list so that she can, easily dive into that to-do list. She'll be like, empty the dishwasher. She'll be like, take the dog for a walk, like stuff she's gonna do anyway. But when she's feeling resistant, she's like, I'm gonna put this down there so that I can start crossing things off. And then when that thing comes up where you might have a lot of fear or a lot of resistance, maybe it's like I already did all this other stuff. Let me see if I can get there. Of your capacity.
It's a systems approach.
It's a systems approach.
She's created a system.
That
allows her to form some habits within a system, but then allows her to make progress. It's a fabulous way to do it. I mean, that'd be a great suggestion. Is we have to change our systems and our habits, or nothing's going to hold.
Yeah, and I think if there's things that you rely upon, whether it's your calendar or your or if you like workout track or something like that, and you're pursuing this goal like Dry January that's not necessarily doesn't make sense in that space, but throw it in there, right? Like bring it with you everywhere. If your work calendar is private, or if it's not, I don't know, that's up to you. But like put Dry January on your work calendar, or put like do it day by day. Be like day 2 of Dry January. Finish your workout and be like, I did this many reps at this weight and this many reps at this weight, and I didn't drink today. Put that in there.
And look at it every day. And what am I doing today? Don't forget about it.
Yeah. And also great. It is a month, right? But I think, celebrating those, I went to a beginners meeting in AA this weekend, and it's like they do one day, I think it's one day through 10 days, right? And then they do 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. But like they hand out chips for the first 10 days. So if somebody's at their, it might not be day 1, but if somebody's at day 2 or day 3, they're at a meeting, like stand up, get a hug if you want one, celebrate that. The hugging is not required. But yeah, I think it's good to celebrate sort of what we've accomplished.
I think what's important too, and most people might not be thinking like this, but for Dry January, whatever you're getting dry at, like the last day of January, the 31st, then what? Like, oh, I get to drink on the 1st. Or are you like, wow, that was really hard? Or, I think you need to look at the month and see what happened. Was it like, no big deal? Do you feel awesome now? And you want to do a dry February? Do you want to do something else and now give up sugar too? Or I think it's not just Dry January and then back to freaking drinking every night. I think you have to look at, like, what did you learn in the month?
Yeah, that makes me think of, And maybe I know Tom and Alicia, I don't know if it's public knowledge in the Came to Believe community, but they participate in these different fitness challenges that they give each other. For example, like Tom is doing 100 push-ups every day of the month.
Every day, yeah.
And I've done things like train for marathons and ultra marathons. And there's this thing that I've experienced where when the challenge is over or when the race is over, like I can get kind of down. I have these post-race blues. Mm-hmm. And I think it's helpful in those moments to sort of like have the ability and sort of along the way sort of prepare for that and have this understanding that at some point like you will reach your goal, and at some point there might be some sort of letdown. And I don't know if it's journaling, or I don't know if it's taking a photo every day or something but some way to reflect on your accomplishment, because life can feel kind of dark when the process ends and when the goal is met. Maybe we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves and assuming that people are accomplishing their goals, but that's been my experience, is like after I run a marathon or a peak race or something, I'm kind of like, what do I do now?
Well, what do you do? Don't you just do another one? That's what I would do.
No, not all. Sometimes that feels kind of crazy though, right?
I love it.
You have that experience? Like you finish the push-up challenge and you're like, let's do another one. And you're like,
yes, she is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or even harder. Do an even harder one. And then back off, or something else in a different realm, but something. I think we always need
I think it's important to keep having goals. For me, it's never felt appropriate. And I've run like multiple marathons in 1 year before. I've like gone from a peak marathon training to a peak half marathon training, but there's always almost some time in between those things. And I also, sort of like to reflect and be like, what do I want to do next?
I think,
how do I feel now? Right. Like I achieved something, but also like at what costs, I think is an important thing to look at.
And what did you get from it? Do you love it? Is your body okay with it? Do you want to do another marathon, but maybe next year? And now I'm going to concentrate on stretching and yoga and something else, or
I mean, that's kind of where I'm at now, is being like, I'd like to be more mobile.
Mm-hmm.
That seems like a good approach now. But also, like, for somebody like me, or for me, a person who identifies as a person in recovery, who has lots of addictive and compulsive tendencies, being like, I want to get more mobile sometimes doesn't feel finite enough. No, it feels too hard, because it's abstract, right? Being like, a more reasonable goal would be like, I'm going to stretch for 40 minutes every day, or I'm going to do this. But even within that stretching, it's like, am I stretching, or am I like laying on the floor? Like how when I'm running, it's very much like I am actually running right now. Like I'm meeting their metrics. It's like this many miles at this pace, and like,
but I think you could bring up a good thing that needs to be addressed too, is like being specific, like being more mobile.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Because being more mobile is not the same as me. And I want to get healthy. That means crap. What does that mean? What are you eating exactly? What are you moving your body? How are you moving it? When on your calendar is it? That's why too, I think a lot of these resolutions don't work, because they just like, I'm going to be healthier. That doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
And you can talk yourself right out of it. So with mobile, it could be like, I'm going to do yoga. I don't even know what you would do, but yoga on Tuesdays, and I'm going to do a boot camp.
Me neither.
On Thursday. I mean, you could figure that out, and then like down the line, like, oh no, I don't like that, but let me do this.
Yeah.
You keep going on the mobile line, but you don't just throw it out like, oh, forget it. No.
And it also doesn't need to necessarily be a goal, right? I'm at a point right now where I'm kind of like acknowledging this mindset shift, right? And maybe somebody's resolution isn't to quit drinking, but it's like, I want to be more like, I want to stop being asleep at the wheel in my relationship with alcohol. right? And that doesn't need to be a goal. That doesn't need to be like, I'm not drinking for the month of January. I'm not drinking ever again. But it can be like, I'm going to pay attention a little bit and be like, is this serving me? And even in that process, maybe it requires like some journaling. Maybe it requires talking to a therapist, or like putting together a small group of friends where like you're all going to sort of check in with each other regarding, is this thing working for me? Is it not? Do I like it? Do I not like it? I know a lot of people who like alcohol works really well for them. You know, I was never that person. Actually, you know, that's not true. I was that person. It worked really, really well for me until it stopped. It worked too well. It became a solution to like lots of social anxiety and lots of fear. It gave me the opportunity to be present and connect with peers in ways that otherwise wouldn't have felt possible. But it became everything. Drugs and alcohol became my whole life. And
we're talking about changing our lifestyle, you know.
Yeah.
Or managing a lifestyle that is forever. It's the goals can be, because they go from one thing to the next, and maybe for people like us, that could be an addiction. We're going to set this goal. We're going to set that goal. We're going to set this, and when instead of adopting a process that is our lifestyle that we're now going to work, which is a mindset thing, Grant, like you said, we're going to adopt, instead of a fixed mindset or a mind, which could still be goal oriented. I've got to just keep having these things. I'm going to have a growth mindset, which says I'm going to move myself through better systems in life to a place that's not perfect all the time, but it's on a constant up ramp that's leading me to a lifestyle that I can sustain over time. It's a mature thing to even identify that and what that is for you and what is your identity in a lifestyle that is where your sweet spot is, right? You know, the God thing comes in for somebody like me. What am I being led to be? Who am I supposed to be? And let me live into that forever.
Yeah. And again, that, like, you know, is something that will change and evolve. You know, it's a lot of listening.
Sometimes I think you're right. Excuse me, if we do too much goal setting, we stop listening and pivot.
Yeah.
And we can get down in a rabbit hole of one thing. And then we miss the pivot, where all of a sudden, Tom, your shoulders are beaten up. You keep thinking 100 push-ups challenge is the thing you're supposed to do. Now you're like going for rotator cuff surgery.
Yeah.
And you were getting the signal, but yet you got your head, because this is what we do, in and around, and then you couldn't get Alicia out of your head. She you all the time. I'm kidding. But being serious about then reflecting on what's working and what's not working. And is this matching my identity? Am I being an authentic Tom? Am I being authentic to who I'm supposed to be? Really hard to figure out. And it's a process. I've been reading a lot about it, and it's not something anybody has down perfect. Being your authentic self, which leads to autonomy, personal autonomy. Think about that.
Yeah.
How do we move towards that? So we want to be always moving towards it, authenticity, than ever actually achieving it. I think it lets you, it would encourage me to be more proactive towards it, knowing that the goal isn't to actually reach perfect, you know, autonomy and authenticity, because I'm probably never going to do it. So somebody like us could quit if we thought that, right? I'm never going to I'll just quit.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I heard in a meeting the other day, you know, this guy basically asked a question. He's like, well, how free do you want to be? You know? And I think that can look like a lot of things to a lot of people, right? Within the confines of the 12 steps, like that's a 10, 11, and 12 thing, right? Like, how free do you want to be? It's like being of service, don't be afraid of like looking at yourself and your stuff and like connecting with other people about that. And then also like legitimately taking time to stop and look around and smell the roses. And if you're, you know, a spiritual person, talk to God. If you're a not so spiritual person, or even maybe even a more spiritual person, like talk to a tree, you know, or like whatever, just give yourself the opportunity to let it come in to you. I mean, on the topic of, you know, goal setting and working around recovery, I think it's important to say in the context of dry January, from my own experience, the first step of the 12 steps, and this isn't necessarily important or whatever, but it's essentially admitting that you have a problem and that your life has become unmanageable. And my first step was trying to quit using drugs and alcohol many, many times and failing. And I think there was nothing wrong with me failing. It was, I hadn't found the right solutions. It wasn't my time, whatever. But I don't think there's anything problematic about being like, I want to try dry January and then not being able to succeed. That's a really normal thing, I think. As you said, Tom, 90% of people don't follow through on their resolutions. And that could be a number of different things, but it's not my job to call somebody an alcoholic or an addict, right? That's really something. What's cool about the 12 steps is that that's something you get to do on your own. Only you get to call yourself that. But if you keep trying and it's something you want to do and it's a goal you want to accomplish, and you're having trouble, the organization I work for, the Phoenix, we build fitness community wellness events that are free to anybody with 48 hours of sobriety. You can find us on the phoenix.org. It's a great place to make connections with other people who are trying just like you are or have succeeded, and different ways to socialize and connect with people outside of drugs and alcohol. And then there's opportunities like Came to Believe or like AA or NA or Dharma recovery, but all of these different sort of programs where, if you sort of realize you want to stop and you can't stop, you're so not alone in that experience.
Right. In your first step, I like that. I mean, I was talking to you guys ahead of time. On January 2nd, 18 years ago, I woke up and knew I was done. Yeah. I could never quit during the holidays, which is a common thing, which is part of why we have the virtual retreat the weekend after New Year's, when somebody might wake up and say, okay, the party's over, now I'm going to give it a shot, and we want to catch them while the iron is hot, right? But I like what you said that you might, let's say you tried dry January and you got 2 weeks into it and you said, I'm not, and really did determine, I don't really have a problem drinking and I like having a couple glasses of wine. I don't know why I'm doing this. I'm going to start to have a couple glasses of wine. That's not a failure. It may be a success. That if you had a question about it and you've come to some resolution, not to use that word, but some thing in your life to say, good, I'm not a problem with it. Or you or like me, we couldn't stop. Like,
I do think most of the times, though, not to cut you off, most of the times that I went back out after being like, I want to stop, it was like I would build up some time.
Right.
And then I wouldn't think of it like a relapse. I would be like, oh, it's time to do this again. You know what I mean? Like my mind would play tricks on me. Like I hadn't really learned anything. It wasn't like I'm 2 weeks into dry January. And it was like, you know what? I think everything's okay. And I learned that everything's okay. But at the same time, it wasn't like, oh no, this is the end of the world. Like I'm using again. Because that would be more like how you described your experience on January 2nd. Right. That would be like, oh crap, like I really need help. And like that is a huge thing, I think, around resolutions, right? I think a lot of people, actually, I don't know, I can't speak for a lot of people, but I think for my experience, there's a lot of resolution making is wanting to like grab autonomy and grab control in my life and be like, I've got this. And I've learned that like, I don't really have anything. Right. But like, if I talk to some other people and if I ask for help and if when I'm afraid, like I say it out loud to somebody else, and I bring some other people or a higher power or whatever into my process, then, I can maybe find some success in what it is I'm trying to accomplish. So I think a lot of people are like, oh, like I'm going to do this because things have been out of control, and finally I'm going to make them none out of control again. I'm going to do it all by myself, and I'm going to show what I'm capable of. I only say that other people do that because I've done that, and I identify as a human being, and I think we're somewhat similar. But that's just not how it works. It's how it happens, but it's not how it works.
What do you guys think about the difference between a goal and commitment? I think that's something we should talk about. Like, I feel like goals are more like resolution-y things, and they just throw out goals, but are you committed? And like when it's hard, are you still committed? And how are you going to take responsibility to still stick to what you said? And I think that we need more commitment towards staying sober, doing 10, 11, 12. Is this working? Do I need to pivot to something else? And look at the past and look at what we're doing and track it and look for the month or for the year and mark it.
Yeah, I think for me, you say the words goals and commitments. I think they work hand in hand in that commitments are how you go about reaching your goals. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, like as an athlete, as a runner, or as a CrossFitter, all these things that I do, right? Like I might have a goal, but then in order to reach that goal, I need to like set up a series of commitments, processes that I go through. You know, like I'll go into starting line at a marathon and I'll have like 3 goals. I'll have an A goal, I'll have a B goal, I'll have a C goal. One will be like, I'm going to run this fast. 2 is like, I'm going to run this fast. 3 is like, I'm going to finish, you know, or whatever. Mm-hmm. But the reason that I'm able to like hold those 3 goals, you know, at that start line is like, well, 1, I've committed to be there that day. And then 2, I've put in probably 16 weeks of work prior to that. And that 16 weeks of work has been a commitment. And I think that really relates back to that idea of like dry January is a little bit of a misnomer, and that it's like it really is a one day at a time type thing. And if you break down dry January to a series of commitments, being like, what am I going to do today? And then what sorts of, here's a great opportunity to plug our mocktail event in New York. Like what sort of sober social gatherings am I going to participate in? Or how am I going to get together with my friends and family potentially during that month in a way that can help me stay sober, you know?
Right. And if they're using it as a distraction or something, then what am I going to use instead? Or why do I need so many distractions? And I think it just brings up a lot of stuff for people to look at and realize and don't ignore.
Yeah.
I think the goal definitely drives the commitment. You say, as long as it's a SMART goal, and that's that acronym, you know, that you guys, or some people, you guys may or may not know, SMART goal is specific, measurable, actionable, relevant, and time dependent.
Yeah.
So you put that together, and then there's
I've never heard that before. I like that.
You never heard that? Yeah.
No.
SMART. It's a business thing. Yeah.
That's probably why I've been, you know, that's probably how I ended up here with you guys. I didn't know that.
Measurable, actionable, relevant, and time dependent. And many people, if we want to do a little lesson on it, miss goals because they haven't measured them up against it's specific. I'm going to do this. It's measurable. I can actually see my progress. Actionable means it's actually something I can do. I mean, if I say I want to learn how to surf in Maui, it's not actionable. I don't live in Maui, right? It's not relevant. I can't do that.
Yeah.
But these things, right? So you set that up. And then there's a series of commitments. And then we talk about the difference between motivation and commitment. Because Alicea and I talk often about this, that you're not going to be motivated all the time to do everything. Mm-hmm. If you want to wait till you're motivated, you'll never do anything.
Yeah.
I have this SMART goal. I'm going to do 100 push-ups. I didn't want to do them yesterday. I mean, I wasn't motivated to do them. But because it's a goal and it was something that I can do, I had to play blah, 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 in a level of commitment, I did them. I
Yeah.
just got through it. But there's a difference, because if you wait to be motivated, it won't be successful, or a lot of the time, actually, especially if the goal is that goal that pushes you right at the edge. You know, you want to set those goals. I think it's in Atomic Habits, they say, set them that aren't too hard, but just a little hard.
Yeah.
Right? You got to just be a little, reach your edge. That's the one you'll do.
Yeah.
You know, so I also.
But I love you talking about the push-ups, because it's like, you know, you're pretty good at push-ups, right? But like, you found your way to the floor, right? That was like kind of step one. You're like, okay, I'm now in a position to do a push-up.
Right.
Like, you started by doing a push-up.
I did one, right.
Yeah. And then you did like a bunch in a row. John can do like 40 push-ups in a row. It's very impressive, right? But like, then he did 40, and then he was like, that's enough for the next 30 seconds or so.
Right.
To doing it again. But yeah, I think, you know, it's actionable and achievable, but all these things are made up of all of these different moments and opportunities to say yes, you know. And I think a lot of people.
And Grant, what helps, not to interrupt, but helps my commitment and strengthens it is when I finish it, when I'm not motivated.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Right.
And then there's that great quote that's like, we suffer more in our imaginations than we ever will in reality.
Right.
And I think that relates a lot to a lot of the work that you and I do, and Alicea, and also this particular conversation. But nothing is ever as hard as you think it'd be. I don't think.
We can always do more than we think. Always.
Well, you know, I used to train people, right? And I'm working with somebody right now, but I'm training, and I always would say this. You know, let's say it was push-ups, and I'll say, do them until you can't do anymore. And then stop at the top when you say you can't do anymore. And they'll stop at the top, and I go, we'll do one more. And they do it. And then that wasn't your last one.
Yeah.
Right? So your mind thinks, you know, what are your boundaries? What are your blockades? What are keeping you? And many times it's a mindset, Grant.
Yeah.
It's a mindset. It's a level of hurt, or it's a level of uncomfortableness that you've set as your boundary. But it isn't your real boundary.
No.
Until you can push past that a little bit.
Yeah. And that's talking about like muscle fatigue, right?
Yeah.
Muscular failure, which is like a very, very real thing.
It's a real thing.
It's a very, very real thing. And there certainly are people who suffer from, you know, intense physical dependence to drugs and alcohol.
Right.
Right. But for those of us who don't suffer from that, like, there is no version of muscular fatigue for stopping drinking. For most people who might be setting out on dry January, I would assume. Right. So it's like, I don't know, in the CrossFit gym, we often talk about, like, we'll do sets of, you know, like bicep curls, right? It'll progressive sets. First set will be 10, you'll pick one weight. Second set will be 10, you'll pick another weight. And then the third set, you'll take that same second weight and you'll do as many as you can. You know, same sort of thing. And the goal is, you know, I'll stand at the whiteboard and be like, what we're looking for here is muscular failure, not emotional failure, not psychological failure, not failure of concentration. You know, it's interesting to think about. But yeah, I mean, like, you know, we all fail all the time at tons of different stuff. So I don't know, it's tough. And it's interesting, you talk about growth mindset. I'm currently taking this like Neuro Institute thing about growth mindsets. And I think within the 12 steps and within the AA community, my experience has been, I start to adapt some more fixed mindset tendencies than growth mindset tendencies in that practice, right? Like, at no point I ever raise my hand and be like, I can't use heroin safely yet, you know? I'm never, I've adapted a fixed mindset in my relationship with drugs and alcohol, and I certainly hope it stays that way. But it's, I don't know, it's interesting thinking about, why, I guess, I don't know. I think this sort of relates to like, why do we choose our goals? How do they serve us?
Well,
what are we interested in?
Right. So I'll challenge that, Grant. So for my growth mindset in this is that I'm going to let myself off the hook from not being perfect at all of those character defects or those things I've identified that have had me in bondage. And if I fix mindset, I'm just this way.
Yeah. No, I hear you. Yeah.
Today I did 90%. Tomorrow I'm going to do 80. Tomorrow I'm always moving toward it. And by the way, I'm also now not needing. It's getting farther and farther away from the drink, the drug, or the habit.
Yeah.
But if I'm in a fixed mindset about it, I guess that's just a different way of looking. I need to have a growth mindset, even about my recovery. If I don't feel like, if it's not a one and done, it can't be for me.
Yeah. And I think there's also sort of like this, I'm trying to think of a good analogy to it. It's sort of like those like Russian babushka dolls, right? Where like
one's in the
big
other
thing. Yeah. But maybe there's like more little thing, like each, like my, like, oh, I can't stop using drugs is like this big thing where it's like, oh, I got like 10, I've detoxed. I've like built some healthy habits. Then all of a sudden that one, the big one opens up, but then it's filled with more little ones that I got to deal with, which are like, and like that never ends. The maybe the collective mass of character defects that I'm dealing with is always less, but that doesn't mean that there aren't more. Do you know what I mean? Like they carry less weight, but I'm also learning, I'm being exposed to new things about myself and how I engage with reality. There used to be holidays or be like, I would like, all I need to do is like not drink, and people in my family would be like, high five, great job. But the next year I like, don't drink. And, I don't know, I say something rude or like I'm disconnected from the family, and then it's like, oh, I got to deal with that thing now. And then it's like, oh, you like maybe, didn't engage with, your brother-in-law was feeling lonely. You could have had a conversation. Then I got to deal with that thing. And like in the grand scheme of things, like I didn't break anything. I didn't overdose. Nobody was scared for my well-being. But at the same time, I'm still sort of, moving down this line of like, oh, I'm not a perfect person and there's a lot to work on.
I find I like that to say the more I know, the more I don't know.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, and maybe some people don't like this, but the more I've grown, the gray has taken over. I mean, there's much more gray than there is black and white.
Yeah.
And that I'm much less likely to judge anyone or myself so black and white about you should this and you should that or you should this and who you have to be, where there's a process. Everyone's on a line moving one way or the other, and where they are on their timeline. Your first year, high five, you didn't drink. Your second year, it was not just did I drink, but have I improved my relationships with my brother-in-law or my sister-in-law? Have I had a conversation I should have? The next year, it's should I whatever, right? All this progress. But it was stuff like you didn't know the year before, and then all of a sudden you don't know, and then all of a sudden you start thinking ahead, going, "What am I not going to know next year?
What am I not going to know next year?" Yeah,
about not making some big judgment about this is this, and then next year you realize, wow, that was not so. It scares me the older I get, the more I ever make an absolute statement.
It's really interesting. That reminds me of like, I've been doing this breathwork practice, the Phoenix. If anyone's in New York City, we have this amazing breathwork event on Tuesday nights. And something that's been a big theme in my life is like not to have polarizing emotions or opinions or anything like that, to practice compassion for myself and for others in my decision making. And this week, somebody sent me something, and it was what Thich Nhat Hanh was like asked to speak somewhere, and it was Thich Nhat Hanh is a Buddhist poet, a Vietnamese Buddhist poet, and he was asked to speak like the day after September 11th, And the thing he like spoke on, which seems so insane, is like not having overwhelming emotions, you know, and not having polarizing opinions, and like not. And it's just interesting that you shared that thing about the gray, because I think that's like also a huge part of this, right? And that's, you know, the thing that I hear when I hear, you know, living in the gray, I think more about, for me, like the opposite of living in the gray is like white knuckling. If that makes sense. It's holding on to things really, really, really tight. And that might be holding on to not drinking. And that might be holding on to like, I want to lose 30 pounds. Or that might be like holding on in all of these sorts of ways. And like sometimes willpower is really, really important. But there's also, for me, there's this huge component of like, it's kind of not going to work unless I get out of the way a little bit. You know, like if I am up here about all of these processes, I'm going to run into that thing where my motivation to not do something, or my opinions about not wanting to do something, or like how I'll convince myself like the push-up challenge is stupid, or like my trying to get sober is stupid, or like just today, like it's about honoring the commitment. It's almost an act of, you know, for a religious person, it's almost like an act of self-devotion, you know, which is kind of like what 10, 11, and 12 is really sort of taking that time to see where you're at and to practice love towards that and to make it a practice.
Right. You know? It's a practice. Sue Foreman says, learning to love the gray. It's easy to live in the gray. It's easier to live in the gray if you can accept that things don't have to be black and white. Black and white are very hard stances to take and can be stressful. When you run up, because when you're white, there's a black against you, and when you're black, there's a white. Where gray leaves you in the, you know, and it's not punching out to be in the gray. It's being realistic. I think it's being open. It's a level to be in a growth mindset. If you're white or you're black, you're in a fixed mindset.
Yeah.
If you're gray, you're white.
Well, let's get some examples. Like with exercise, it could be like do nothing or run 20 miles. No, you could walk. You could run slowly for 5 miles. You could do this. You could do this, do that. Right? You could. It doesn't have to be here or here. There's so much in between. And with food too, it doesn't work with alcohol because that's abstinence. But with food, because that's my addiction, I have to eat. So it's not starve myself or binge. No, there's a lot of gray in there. And depending on who I am or who you are, maybe it's here, or maybe, okay, here, or you didn't take the meat out and the veggies to eat, so I'm just going to have pizza. No. You could go get a whole chicken, or you could, you know, there's so much more. What else? What else can I do? What else? What else? Don't just be, because that's where all the crazy is.
Yeah.
We have to be gray, and I'm not gray. That's something I need to work on. I'm black or white.
And I had a whole pint of Ben & Jerry's strawberry cheesecake ice cream last night.
How was that?
It was so good. It was like Christmas and New Year's all in a cup. It was wonderful. But and you know, that's 1,200, 1,500 calories, some crazy number of calories in that. Who cares?
Yeah. Not even the calories, it's the sugar that get you.
It's the sugar, whatever got me. But I can get up today and be black and white. I failed. I should never have done that. See, I'm trying not to eat sugar and I couldn't do it. Or I could get up and say, see, that's sugar. I'm just giving in. Or a great thing, and now I'm going to be back on my path of growth. I'm in it, and it's all okay because I'm going to have ice cream once in a while, and it's not the end of the world, and it's not. So I don't know.
What can you learn from it? That's an important question. Like, why did I eat that whole thing? Just because? Okay, whatever. Was I upset and mad and ran to the ice cream? Or, you know, learn from it. Okay, next time I'll eat half of it. Or next time I won't buy it. Or, you know, just don't have to What? It's over. That was last night. So now
Yeah.
it's done.
In the end, I'm thinking about this with resolutions, and when I've made some changes, I've decided to commit to some things. I've decided to just get back on a few things that I knew better to do that I've just kind of slacked off doing out of laziness or life. But I'm not calling them resolutions. If you looked at me and said, Tom, what resolution would you make? It would go, for me, this is for Tom, it would go against the process I'm working, which is a 10, 11, and 12, which is a constant improvement. If I have to make a resolution, I feel motivated to make this a strong resolution, that would be a problem for me. Like, I don't have a resolution to make today. I'm going to tell you that I'm going to continue to grow in my process. That's my thing.
Yeah.
It's freed me a little. And my goal or my challenge to do 100 push-ups is part of the bigger picture of staying healthy for me. It's not a resolution to do anything. It's just a thing I'm doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oof.
I mean, it's interesting. Like, you think of things in the 12 steps, like, like 90 and 90.
Right.
Well,
that's
one
not
of the reasons.
Steps,
That's no, I understand. I'm right. Saying within 12-step communities. My apologies.
Exactly.
Within different 12-step communities, and I think one of the reasons that something like that works, and like getting a service commitment works, and all of these sorts of things, is that it appeals to. It worked really well for me because it appealed to, who I was at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Being like, that sounds really hard. That sounds really scary. Like, I need to do something really intense. I really need to turn this around, because the other thing I was doing was intense, and all I sort of knew was how to live in a massive amount of intensity.
Exactly.
And being able to seize, like, intensity is a good thing, but you either you need to be really self-directed with it, or, regardless of what we all here think about the rules of Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, or whatever, like, turn to some people that maybe know what they're doing and ask them how you should direct your intensity.
Right. Be in fellowship with the community, for sure.
Yeah. And it also, like, answers a lot of those questions, like, I'm not drinking. Like, what am I going to do? Instantaneously, it's like, you're going to have a lot to do. Like, you got to come here. You got to come here every day. And like, you got to put the chairs away. And like, you got to pick it, and you got to call 5 people a day.
You're so right. If you lived in white, when you're trying to make a change, all we know to do is then black, right?
Yeah.
One thing, intensity thing for another. How do you live in the gray? How do you create that process? You're right. And on your own, you won't. At least that's our experience.
Yeah, I think that's very much the truth. And I don't think that harnessing that intensity, is a bad thing. But I think I also need to have an awareness of that. If I've been, being lackadaisical or not doing something, sometimes that, maybe that first step is me getting myself super psyched up and like doing too much. And I don't know if there's anything wrong with that. But one thing I also wanted to add about, dry January is, I think things like, I'm not going to eat any sugar, or I'm not going to drink for the month of January, or whatever. Totally fine in principle, but those sorts of things will always serve me more. Where if, like, yes, that negative or that negation exists, but actually there's like the intention to replace it with something positive or goal-minded. So maybe if it's like, I'm not going to eat any sugar for the month, it's like, I'm going to make 3 new recipes every week that don't have sugar in them. Mm-hmm. So it's like taking that goal, but then also building it into a practice and action and like a certain sort of understanding. With not drinking, it can be things like, as I said before, like, I'm going to go to like 5 sober events this month. Or I'm going to like seek out other non-alcohol based activities that I can do in the evening, being like, normally on Friday nights, I'd like go to the bar. Mm-hmm. Instead, like this every Friday night for the month of January, I'm going to like take a pottery class or something like that. I think the more that I can take things of like negation and turning them into things of proactivity, sort of like the better off I am as well.
Sounds like a mic drop. Well, we're 3 minutes off from today. The hour goes so fast. It's like the shortest hour of the week. If you're listening to us and some of this is sparked your interest and you're thinking about whether you're needing to make some kind of commitment against alcohol or drugs or some habit, and Dry January sounds like a great way to test that out for you. Certainly, we hope you to give it a try. You can reach out to Grant from the Phoenix if you want to try some exercise and work towards getting healthy and work towards building in a fellowship of community of healthy people. He's got tons of stuff going on. Reach out to us. We can get you through a jump start in a retreat and get you a program that might work for you, and then send you off to the Phoenix to get healthy, because that's what we think. It's a total thing, guys. It's more than just getting off, because we got to replace it, with something good. So come see us at our mocktail hour on the 17th. Tell us how you're doing in your Dry January, if you want. And talk to us about a challenge that you've had, and tell us. We'll be there wanting to talk about it with you. Grant will be there. Alicia won't, but Grant and I will be there. And we will see you all after the virtual retreat. Next Tuesday will be a post-retreat recovery live. It'll be wonderful. Thanks, Grant, for being with us. Thanks, Alicia.
Thank you.
And have a great rest of your week, everybody.
Bye.
Happy New Year.
Peace.
Bye.
Bye.